So this is the third poem that I am going to read today with you. The third love poem by Donne. The first two, which I discussed with you in the earlier classes, The Good Morrow and The Sun Rising, have already given you some idea about the kind of love poems that Donne used to write. And this is the third one, which is definitely a bit more intricate and perhaps vastly more famous than the other two. The canonization is actually a process that is connected with the Christian faith. This is the process of raising a religious person, an extremely religious person, to the level of sainthood. Or rather, an extremely religious person is led gradually, to sainthood. And this process is called canonization. I shall talk about canonization later also. And you can see on the board what I have written there. You can see the process that leads an extremely religious person to get formally admitted to sainthood. So this is called canonization. Now I shall not read the poem in its entirety, or I shall not stop at every line and discuss the implication of every word, but I shall make a general discussion of this poem, pointing out the more important aspects of the poem to you. Now look at the title of the poem, The Canonization, and in the very title we can find metaphysical wit. There is apparently a paradox, a note of paradox in the title itself, because canonization is something which is holy, and connecting this holy Christian process with love, ordinary human love of the material world, may seem to be definitely rather paradoxical. And this paradox is there, and how Donne has used this paradox to frame his poem. Now, let me read the first few lines of the poem. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. Now this let me love, that also brings certain issues which we should discuss. What do you mean by love? Let me love. Love as a verb has several meanings in English language. So love may also suggest love making, a sexual act. So connecting a Christian process with love making, a sexual act, itself is rather blasphemous. So we can also note that there is a note of blasphemy maybe here in the poem. Somebody is telling his friend or some other person who has come to intrude who has come to tell him to desist from making love? And the poet or the lover says, for God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. Why should I be debarred from loving my beloved? The world goes on its own way. There are other persons who do their work and live their life in their own terms. So why should not the lover be allowed to do what he wants to do? For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. Go chide my palsy or my gout, my 5 grey hairs, or ruined fortune flout. With wealth your state, your mind with arts improve. You take him a course, you get a place, observe his honour or his grace, or the king's real or his stamped face. Contemplate what you will, approve, so he will let me love. Now some scholars have suggested that perhaps the man in question here in the poem is an old man, because there is reference to palsy, few hair, and gout. So possibly the lover is an old man, and the old man has fallen in love with a young girl, and therefore he is so particular about his right to make love to her. And he tells the other man who has come to intrude into his affair that the man can do his work. He can go and improve his business. He can go and look at the face of the king going to the court, or he can look at the face of the king, well, on the currency note or on the currency coin where the face of the king is stamped. So he can do whatever he wants to do, but he must not interfere with his love making. Now I think, there is no reason to take the lover as a very old man, because what the lover suggests is that old age or disease are natural things. Like all other men, he will also grow old, and maybe that his hairs will fall and he will develop diseases. These are very natural. In a similar way, love or urge for love has come to him in a natural way. This is a part of life, and therefore he should not be disallowed to have his own way, to have his own wish. In the second stanza, we find, alas, alas, who is injured by my love? What merchants' ships have my sighs drowned? Who sails my tears have overflowed his ground? Who did my coals a forward spring remove? What did the heats which my veins feel add one man to the plague bill? Soldiers find words, and lawyers find out still litigious men, which quarrels move. Do she and I do love? So this second stanza is also a continuation of the same mood, the same point, that my love is not going to interfere with anybody else's affair. And Donne has given here so many imaginary situations: flood, plague, etc., etc. So, and he wants to ask whether his love or his love making has caused any ill, any harm to anybody. It has not. And the other people, like the lawyers and the doctors, they do their work. They are allowed to do their work. They live their life on their own terms. So why should there be an injunction on their love? They must be allowed to love as they please. Call us what you will. We are made such by love. Call her one, me another fly. We're tapers too, and at our own cost die. And we in us find the eagle and the dove. The phoenix riddle hath more weight by us. We two being one are it. So to one neutral thing both sexes feed. We die and rise the same, and prove mysterious by this love. Now, there are many other comparisons which may be called metaphysical conceits. But the poet here, or the speaker here, compares himself and his beloved to flies. So they are like two flies, and the taper or the fire is also there in them. Flies go and jump into the fire, and the flies kill themselves. So our love is our fire, and we go and we kill ourselves in the fire of love. As critics have pointed out, that here is also a suggestion of love making, sexual love making. Well, we die, meaning that suggests the consummation of love. We fall and we rise. Well, that definitely suggests, the process of love making, critics have said. But more important is perhaps the suggestion to the phoenix, the mythical bird. And you can look there on the board, what I have written there: phoenix, mythical bird that rises from its ashes. The phoenix is a bird that dies, but its death is not final. It rises from its death. But more than that, there is something more than that. Phoenix is one bird, and the male and the female are there, ingrained in the existence of one bird. So the lover and the beloved, they are separate, but they become one. Now we can remember that in the Good Morrow also, Donne said the same thing. The lover and the beloved, they are separate hemispheres, but when they conjoin, they become the single and the whole world. But there perhaps there is no sexual suggestion. Here the sexual suggestion is obvious and prominent. So the reference to phoenix is definitely a metaphysical conceit, and how neutral sex is suggested by Donne. By this reference we can try to understand. So we are the flies, and also we are the birds, and we make love, we die, but that's not final. We rise from our death. This is our love, because our love can make us deathless. The love will make them immortal. we can die by it, if not live by love. And if unfit for tombs or hearths, our legend be, it will be for verse. And if the piece of chronicle we prove, it will build in sonnets pretty rooms. As well, a well-wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes as half-acre tombs, and by these hymns all shall approve us canonized for love. So we live by love and we die by love. If our love doesn't allow us to live physically, we shall die. But this death will make us immortal. And if there are no tombs, great monuments erected for us, definitely great verses will be written for us. And these great verses will be like the mantras of love. So if no great poems or epics are written for us, at least great sonnets will be written for us. And as I said, so these will act as the mantras of love for the future lovers. And thus invoke us, for whom revered love made one another hermitage. You to whom love was peace that now is rage, you did the whole world's soul extract and drove into the glasses of your eye. So met the mirrors and such spies that they did all to our epitomize countries, towns, courts, back from above the pattern of your love. So lovers from all countries will invoke us, because we shall become the deities of love, the gods and goddesses of love, the saints of love. Therefore, our love will finally prove to be immortal. Now please look at the board first. Well, some of the points I have written down over there, and let us discuss. The first point I have written over there: variety of tones, mood and feeling. Variety of tones, mood and feeling we find here in this poem, as we find in the love poems of John Donne in general. Well, there is an element of poignant delight in the very first stanza of the poem. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. Because the lover or the poet finds the greatest delight in life in love or love making. And the way he puts it, for God's sake. So that definitely suggests the intensity of delight in the poem and in the poet. The same intensity is perhaps there in the sun rising, and a sense of awakening was there in the good morrow. So while in the good morrow there is a sense of awakening, in the sun rising we have a sense of relief. And here, finally, as we go to the final stanza of the poem, the canonization, we find a sense of serenity. So from intensity of love making to the final phase of serenity. The lover or the poet wants to love the beloved at any cost, at every cost. And finally, he concludes that this love for each other will raise them to the level of saints. They will be canonized as deities of love. Now, well, about paradox, I have told you earlier. This is suggested first by Professor Clint Brooks. This paradox is there because, well, love, material love and Christian faith, holy Christian love, they are compared. But there is another thing perhaps which we should mention or point out. Deities of love. So, well, maybe there is a touch of, well, pagan faith, because deities of love like Venus or Aphrodite or even Cupid, these are the deities of love in Greece and Rome, in their pagan ways of life. So this pagan way of life and the Christian way of life, they are juxtaposed, and this creates a sense of paradox. Well, I have mentioned earlier also in my earlier lectures that the influence of Anne More, whom John Donne loved and finally whom he married, was great on the poet. The intensity of love about which the poet or the lover speaks here in this poem is perhaps a real one. Perhaps Donne used to love his beloved or his wife with the same kind of intensity. And then one technical aspect I shall be pointing out to you. Here in this poem we find an abundance of monosyllables. For God's sake, let me love. All these are monosyllabic words. So an abundance of monosyllabic words has weakened the pace of the poem, which we may perhaps note. We must mention at the same time, well, the mystery of marriage, the Christian mystery of marriage, which is linked in the poem with the phonic smith. The lover and the beloved, the male and the female, they become one. In Christian faith also, it is said that Jesus Christ is married to the church. So, the male and the female, Christ and church, they become one. Because Christ is the church and church is Christ. And therefore, there is a suggestion of a kind of neutral love. So in phonics also, the male bird and the female bird are merged into one bird. That is phonics. And we may also point out another thing, that is Plato. Plato was perhaps playing in the mind of John Donne. Maybe it could be possible, because in Plato's Symposium, it is said that in the original human beings, both the female and the male units were together. The final version that we find today in the division of human beings into males and females came much later. This is suggested by Plato in his Symposium, and we do not know, well, it is very much possible that Plato was working in the mind of John Donne while he was thinking of the poem. And finally, I should tell you that in Donne's love poetry, we have three strains. The cynical strain, the strain of conjugal love, and Platonic love. Now, well, here in this poem, the Canonization, we have the second and the third present. No cynicism is there, of course, but conjugal love, the love between the husband and the wife. So the man and the woman loving each other, enjoying each other's company, and finally there is a Platonic touch. Because when the lover and the beloved are raised to the level of deities, when they are finally as if canonized, perhaps the sexual note will be obliterated. So here in this poem, both these strains, the strain of conjugal love and the strain of Platonic love, are present. And finally, two other things I shall point out and then end this session. In this poem, as in other love poems of Donne, we find Donne's philosophy of love. What is Donne's philosophy of love? Finally, this is the realism. What happens in reality? So, in the life of the lover and the beloved, the man and the woman, what Donne has presented initially, predominantly, is the real emotion, the real passion of a real man and a real woman. Now, some other critics have pointed out that, well, this is the one poem where, although Donne presents the world of the lover and the beloved, but beyond the world of the lover and the beloved, there is another world, the world of the ordinary human beings, the world of reality, that is also presented, or at least suggested. It is reference to the court, the currency, the lawyers, the physicians, the plague, and many other things. So, beyond the world of the lover and the beloved, there is another world, the real world, which is also suggested, hinted at by the poet. Well, the poet definitely suggests that the lover and the beloved, they are conspicuously different. Exclusive world of the lover and the beloved is there, but beyond this exclusive world of love, there is the world of reality, which is also presented or suggested or hinted at by John Donne. Thank you very much.